Hello and welcome to Vitality Women Leading Audaciously. Today, I'm super excited to have as a guest on our show, Angela Engel, which is a German name, right? Engel is actually angel, isn't it? You're like angel, angel.
Yeah.
She's the founder and publisher of the Collective Book Studio. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you here too. This is a big topic for a lot of people, and the shape of the publishing industry has changed so much. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about how you got here and you mean to publishing into what you do now. Tell me a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, I always think, well, how far back should I even start, right? But I was born in Minnesota, and then I went. I have three. I'm one of three, and I went to the University of Oregon, got a degree in creative writing and comparative literature, and right out of college, got a job in book publishing. Really early on, as a young woman, I grew really quickly in my career. I was blessed to really kind of be over 20 years ago, work in corporate, work at book places like 10 Speed Press, which is part of Random House now, and Chronicle Books here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and working with corporations such as Target and Costco and Bye Bye Baby and you name it. I've probably sold to it as a shopping cart. And really being able to present as a young woman in my late 20s and throughout my 30s to these large corporations selling books.
Amazing. But like, so your interest was in literature, but and so you went into publishing because that just called to your heart, or like that just seemed what was logical? Like what about the publishing industry interested you?
Mm. I mean, I've actually never written my own book, but when I was even in third grade, I remember reading Charlotte's Web and like thinking, I want to be a writer. I want to write a Charlotte's Web book. And I just always fell in love with literature, always like loved the character development. And really, I think one book that shaped me was called The History of Reading by Alberto Manguel, an Argentinian writer. And he kind of talks about the idea of how we even became readers. As you know, we painted on caves, and then we
Right.
came up with this scroll and then this bound book. And I think that really fascinated me. And so I always wanted to kind of get into that industry that made books.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And now, the younger generation and even our generation, we're moving away from tangible books and into Kindle, Audible, and even my daughter was so crazy about it years ago. The texting, it's like a book that came
Mm.
through in text messages, which I was just blown away by. But we do want to consume information, and we do want to share stories, which I think is a big part of the history of books and literature, and our imaginations like to run wild. But your genre, the like what you're really interested in, your publishing company, sounded really interesting. Lifestyle, wellness,
Yeah, it's
nonfiction.
nonfiction. Yeah, so really my career, um, basically from my mid 20s on, I started to really focus on publishing companies that did cook, wine, home, garden, self-help, nonfiction subjects, lifestyle subjects, as well as children's books. And so, and since my background really is in sales and marketing and business development, when I founded my own company, which we're going into year 4, and my own imprint and what I wanted to publish, it's really what I strongly believe has to be something that I'm good at and I'm interested in. So that's why I still stayed with those subjects versus like a memoir or a novel.
Yeah, it's so funny. I tried to pick up a novel the other day, and I only lasted about 20 minutes, because I was like, I really want to learn about consciousness and all the other things like that you're talking about. It's just who I am, and there are a lot of us out there, as I'm sure you know, because your company exists because of us. um, Women listening, though, all of them have really interesting stories. Many of them are entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have their own books. And so lately, what I've noticed, because I get pitched all the time by people who want me to either write a chapter in their book, and what I call and you call a pay to play. And so, how is what you do different than that?
Oh, that's really, really a good question. So, publishing, there's always going to be an element. I'm going to tell everybody and an author that like you have to invest in your work and pay something, right? You're going to be paying a writing coach. You're going to be paying different types of groups. There's all types of, even when you want to get traditional published and find an agent, there's a lot onus on you to develop your brand, to develop your website, your social media platform. How else are you going to, so you're going to invest a lot of money that way. And then what I saw is that, which completely, I hear almost like a cacophony of entrepreneurs and business owners who are like, wait a second, publishing, why are you telling me it's going to take 3 years to get my work published when I know that this book can help with speaking engagements or my coaching business, other things that I do in my life. This is in the nonfiction space, right?
Yeah.
So I think that self-publishing really emerged into such a point where now it's like the thing to do. And so, if to do it well, you got to spend a lot of money. The people that
Yes.
are like on all of those bestseller lists and launch pads, I mean, I'm just watching it in book trailers and Amazon advertising campaigns and paying on it for different kinds of, honestly, paying for a Forbes article to come out, for people. Like these are things that they're doing to elevate their book sales. And ultimately still, no matter what, they're not based in their careers have not been in the publishing space.
Right.
Meaning, you can go to Ritzy, you can hire all the people you're doing, but ultimately then you still are your own business. You're becoming a publisher and you're launching your book on an online platform only, because
Right.
really you have no retail access. And are you going to hire an entire sales force?
Right. No.
So that's where I kind of am asking people, like, what is your true motivation for this? Like, if it is self-publishing might work for you, if you just want some 500 books and be part of a lecture series, fine. But if you really want to sort of really take it to professionals who are going to work on your vision, your statement, and also down to even cover design and typography, and then actually launch you into stores, whether that's the Strand in New York or Powell's in Portland. I think you're in the North Bay Book Passage in Corte Madera. I just think that is has to be strategic, because those bookstores are businesses and they need to also be able to sell the product.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? I'm gonna tell you a funny story. So I was actually writing a cookbook for a friend of mine who has a very large raw food company. So we were doing, I think I did like 170 recipes in like 2 days. And the ghostwriter of this book that the cookbook was a part of, was interviewing me. And she'd been a HarperCollins ghostwriter for, I think, 40 years. So she's really seasoned, lives in New York City. And she pauses the recording and she says, Helene, you really need to publish your own book. And I said, yeah, I've heard that before. And she's like, well, just, think about it and call me. So I called her a few years later and I said, I'm ready to write my book now. I've got the title, I've got the outline, I'm ready. And she's like, no one gives a shit about your book. I was like, whoa. She's like, yeah, it was really interesting. She's like, I could take your money, like very New York, which I appreciate. But like, but she's like, you need like 200,000 followers, you need 40 grand. And, and my publisher isn't going to like look at you unless you're like really, really strong in that way. And she's like, plus, you can just go out and speak, but it's like, you can't speak if you don't have the book. And it's like, it's so difficult actually to be in our position on this side of the street. And some people do it. They pay to play, like you were talking about, either in the publishing or the self-publishing, but either way, it's a real labor of love and a huge investment of time and money.
Absolutely. And so what I did is I decided to say, okay, publishing has asked people to pay all the time. Just like, look at this, even in like restaurants or people in the food industry, they've had to pay for being traditionally published since I've been in it for over 20 years in some way, in photography, in a writer, something. And if they get an advance, majority of that advance is going to actually make their book. They maybe make $300 in their pocket, and that advance then is actually not paid out to them until they sell their books. and
Wow.
they get made. So it's such a funny industry in that way. So I said, okay, what if I just said, hey, there's no advances. So that's how my company works. Like there's no advances. I come up with a budget. It's called partnership publishing. I have a warehouse in Chicago. I have full staff, sales staff who goes out and sells your book, whether that is at Barnes and Noble or at the Atlanta gift show or the New York gift show. And like, I'm taking on all of that overhead, and you are taking on the overhead and helping pay us to develop your book. And
Mm,
when we develop your book, we're going into partnership, and we work on what that could cost. We do a creative bid. The difference is you actually then own the IP, for meaning that like you own the art, you own the photography, you can use it in other ways, on your social media, on your
yeah.
website.
Folks, those of
We're
you who are not familiar, like that is really, really, really important to own your own IP. So that's huge. I just thought that's a huge gift that you're giving your authors.
Yeah, so that is where like I think a lot of people go the self-publishing, but then what? Then what do? They walk into the bookstore sees if it's like carried, but it's not really carried. How are they getting printing? Like, how are they negotiating printer rates? Like, do you really want to be doing that? Because you probably make more money an hour being a chef or being a cook, like,
Right.
or being a wellness, coach. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, that's what I say to
Mhm.
people. And so that let us take care of that.
I love it. That's so cool. That's really exciting. So 4 years, and you've got your team and your warehouses and your distribution channels and a lot of your contacts from the rest of your life before you started this company, this publishing company. And so it sounds like a busy life.
Yes, I have three girls. I have three kids too myself. I am a mom,
How
and
old
I
are
have
your kids?
a um I have a daughter who's almost 14. She'll be in high school next year.
Mm.
I have a 10-year-old, and I have also a 6-year-old.
So good. Yeah. And you're just at the time, I felt like, at least my daughter was 7 to 14. Like it's just so much more freedom, such a different phase.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
My daughter just turned 17 and it's totally different. It's really amazing. I spent pretty much the entire weekend with her and it was so delightful.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was saying to another colleague of mine this morning, actually, it's like my 14-year-old needs me in such a really important way, but in such a different
Yeah. It's like, don't bug me. But stay
way.
home and don't go out. It's like,
Totally. Or like, don't make me responsible for all my sisters, like I have to be reminded that my oldest is not, no, it's my job still to be responsible for that 10-year-old and that 6-year-old.
they want you close, but not too close.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
how do you juggle it all? Like what do you do so that you can, honestly, we all of us who are moms and entrepreneurs, we're always, pulled in a lot of different directions. As the, whether you're in partnership or, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, and even for yourself. And it's really, it can be overwhelming. So how do you structure it? Some people like schedules, some people don't. Some people have to, what do you do to schedule yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I love to run. I'm not nearly the runner I used to be when I was, younger, but I still do a ritual of 2 days a week, like really scheduling that like you would a doctor's appointment or a dentist cleaning, like really like this is my time. So I do run a lot of run walking because I get the best kind of to that time to myself to really think things through. And
Yeah,
so, and then I also like to do a Pilates or other little supplemental things in the morning, but I think the running is where I get the most clarity.
I would agree with that. And not that running per se, but I was tweezing out part of what I teach, and it's called embodiment. And I was looking at all the different components of what embodiment means and what it is. And one of the main components was sweating.
Mm,
And I think that things like running are really helpful to kind of push through something and reach a kind of breakthrough point where you're kind of, your endorphins are running, your heart is racing, not racing, but it's elevated. And then you have this kind of breakthrough. The sweat is a breakthrough. And like, we all have that moment when we're running, walking, hiking up mountains, whatever it is, playing tennis, pickleball. Like today I was doing some yoga stuff too. That was really intense. And it's really important, I think, also for me. It's like if I get kind of grumpy if I
Oh
don't have.
yeah, no, I can tell. And like even, and my husband is also a small business owner and entrepreneur. And like today, with our three kids and having them in different schools, I was like, okay, when am I going to fit the run in, right? Like I know I need this. So I just said, hey, why don't I drop the kids at your office at 4:45 because the daylight savings, the time changed, and that kind of like I needed to sleep. Sleep is also really important.
So
So
important.
yeah, so
Right.
if I tell people how I make it through, it's like also understanding like I'm not going to lose my run, but on the Monday morning that I used to go at 6:15 when it's 5:15, I'm not going to push myself to do that. Instead, I'm going to carve out, okay, because the sun doesn't set, I'm going to just shift my mindset, but I'm still going to get that in. And I think
Yes.
letting go of like it always has to be one way versus
Mhm.
how do I be a little bit more adaptable within also the routine I need.
That is excellent advice, especially for like type A women who are definitely
Yes.
listening. Because we do. It's like, I love, my friend sent me this quote. It was like, I'm totally flexible when everything is going my way. I was like,
Exactly. Exactly. And I have that too. I get anxiety. I like can feel the anxiety, right? Like I could
yeah.
feel the anxiety erupt in me of like, when am I going to fit this all in if it's not in my routine? And so I've learned to actually through coaching and exercise for myself is like, how do I still make that time, but be flexible within it?
Yeah, it's really important. And that's it can be a slippery slope for some people. Because they'll be like, oh, well, I won't get to it. And then slowly, slowly, they are losing the prioritization in their lives. And I would say by the time women end up coming to me, oftentimes they put themselves as a last priority. And there's definitely a lot of cleanup work to do to kind of, have confidence to reprioritize yourself. So it can be a slippery slope, but I know that I'm really committed to it. Maybe too much so even. I don't know. I'm really into it because I know the value that it provides for me. I just can't show up as great mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually without that embodiment practice, which could be running. Like it doesn't have to be dance or some kind of weird neocortex inhibitive movement pattern. It can be anything as long as you're engaged in it emotionally. Yeah. So when you're tired, though, it sounds like you sleep. Um, but is there anything else you do, any ritual or practice that you do when you're feeling kind of low on energy because you've just been, taking the kids to three different schools and probably cooking dinner and running your company and being a wife?
Yeah, actually, really honestly, like cooking relaxes me.
Me
So people
too.
like think it's really weird, but like, for example, yesterday we got home from a family trip. We went down to this beautiful Padre Dunes at like 6 o'clock.
Mm.
And like there's laundry and there's things to put away, right? And like I should probably check some work emails or whatever it is that you're supposed to do. And I just stopped and I was like, God, all these vegetables did not get eaten and they're going to wilt and go bad. For I just stopped and started chopping. And my husband was
Mm.
like, what are you doing? And I was like, you know what? I just need this time. So I like used all these vegetables. I made this huge, huge couscous. This probably will be for the whole week. But that for
Mm.
me is my moment of it wasn't even about like feeding anyone right that minute. Like honestly, we picked up a pizza, fed the kids. Like it wasn't about that I was needed to make this beautiful meal for my family. It was actually about just the act of like putting on my music and having that time in the kitchen to myself.
I love that. You're actually the first person. I probably interviewed like 50 people, and you're the first person. And I shares the same relaxation. I don't know
Huh.
what it is. It's like, I think also because I have a lot of big projects that are not easy to bring to completion because they're constantly evolving. That doing like cooking something like you just described, it's like I can finish it, I can
Yes.
enjoy it. It's so relaxing. And I've never met anyone else that really understands that. Um,
Yes.
I was at a
It,
mastermind last week with these extraordinary entrepreneurs from all over the country. And we had been just basically masterminding like 6 to 8 hours a day, which is fun and exciting and creative, but it was also like intense, right?
yes.
We didn't leave the house for like 5 days. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. And at the end of it, I was like, do you guys mind if I just cook for a couple of hours? And they're like, no, sure, go right ahead. And it was just like so nurturing.
Yes.
Um,
And I think of it my grandma, my grandmother was, one of them was born in Italy, and she loved to cook, and she moved in with us after my grandfather passed away when I was 6 years old, and
Oh.
lived with me throughout until I was in junior high. And I think, watching her cook and like just having her part of the kitchen, this Italian grandmother who literally would hand cut pasta.
Mhm.
And I would shake it out when I came back from school, and I was the oldest child. I think those are like those little rituals to me are so relaxing. And I think that's part of
Mhm.
why I do it today. It's like I get
Huh.
to sort of think about just the things that I really enjoy about the kitchen.
That's a
Even,
good point. Yeah, both my parents are like gourmet chefs.
yeah,
They're
like
not a restaurant professional, but yeah, that's a really interesting correlation. I never thought about it. Yeah.
Mhm. Because people has asked me before, like friends or why do you do this? I think it has to do with just kind of that kind of like, this was something that I loved as a kid, watching my grandmother cook, and it's relaxing to me.
Yeah, I totally get that. I can totally relate. Yeah, my mom and dad were all, we had everything was made from home. Well, just about everything was homemade, except for like those little things that crept in, like Velveeta cheese. I'm like so mortified that we ate Velveeta, but I'm still alive. Or like,
Yeah, and my mom actually uh she took always odds and end jobs growing up, and she actually ended up baking bread for a baker, and then she ended up doing some like a little coffee shop and helped this guy like create coffee cakes and cake. So my mom just naturally did those types of things too. So I think it's just in me.
totally. We used to like do Christmas baking for all the doctors and everything. Yeah, it was like, yeah, you're right. It was just part of growing up. That's so interesting. I love that.
Mhm.
So nice. So if people wanted to learn more about partnering with you, because that sounds like that's how
Mm.
you look at it. It's like how can they find out more information, contact you, and look at the opportunity?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm really easy on LinkedIn. I'm just Angela Engel, and I can give you, but just look me up. I'm the publisher and founder of the Collective Book Studio. And on Instagram, it's just at the Collective Book Studio. We are active on Instagram because so much of our books are very visual. And then also I would say subscribe to our newsletter. So our website is thecollectivebook.studio. But then subscribe to our newsletter. We are always talking about things that are happening in the book industry, design awards that we've A1 or finalists in. I always say this to every person who wants to write a book: do your research, do your comp research, not just your vision. Someone else probably thought of your idea. 100%. We've been pitched over and over again. That said, there's only one you. And so that's what I always remind nonfiction authors, like, there's only one you. And since you're the unique voice in your book, um, figure out how you can stand out among all the competition, but do the competition. So subscribing to my newsletter, you can also see what we're publishing and what else is out there in these genres.
I love
Not
that.
just not just Amazon, because
Right.
Amazon, because our books are actually in stores and retail. Walk into a Barnes and Noble, walk into a Book Passage, and see what's in those sections.
Nice. I love that. I really appreciate that. I feel like they're words of wisdom. And I think we forget that our voice is so unique and that we really need to speak it because we do have important things to say, all of us. And it's so unique.
Yes, and if you have that book in you, like, I'm happy to just like, send me a link and DM me, and give any kind of advice I can, because I can see where like it's frustrating for people to feel like, should I be waiting 3 years? And I say, no, you don't have to wait 3 years.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It was fun. I love it.
Take, be well now.